Have you heard the saying, paralysis through analysis? When it comes to gardening and seed starting, you can't worry about mistakes or errors. They're going to happen. They might not even be mistakes. It could just be nature doing what nature sometimes does, which can I love the Thomas Edison quote about inventing the light bulbs. I have not failed 10,000 times. I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that those 10,000 ways will not work. He goes on, but you get the idea. Don't get discouraged if things don't go exactly as planned. All around us, we hear and see things like, here's the best way to do this, here's the best way to do that. Just forget that stuff. Do your research, assemble ideas, keep notes, and proceed with your garden. The best way is the way that works for you. Now, there are 5 basic items, 5 key ingredients you need to provide your seed in order for them to grow. Light, growing medium or soil, water, air, and warmth. That seed, courtesy of Mother Nature, Gaia, God, however you want to validate the universe, has everything needed to grow into an amazing plant. From here to here. I want to explain how I do my seed starting. Go over the 5 items that I think are important and what works best in my situation. Maybe it can help you. When you're starting seeds, light really doesn't come into the picture until after germination. In fact, most seeds need dark to germinate. Be sure to check your seed pack for recommended planting depths. And of course, natural sunlight is always my default position. That's what I always try to use for plant growth. The one exception I have is when producing winter microgreens, in which I have to use artificial light. I have a video coming up about microgreens in the future, in which I'll cover lighting. For seed destined for the garden, natural light from the very start seems to be the best. A grow box, windowsill, greenhouse. Surprisingly, if a plant requires full sun on the package, that's only 6 hours of sun a day. Not as much as one might think. I'll put a link in the description to a very good article on that very subject from Kansas State University. There are a great many ways to provide soil for your seed. Here's a couple that I use. I found them very effective. There are many more. Now, soil blocks, the single biggest benefit that I like about soil blocks is there's no single-use plastic. The soil blocker creates a small depression that you put the seed into. You press the seed down into the soil block with the back of a pencil or something like that. Cover it with a little bit of soil, give it a little spray with water, and away you go. They're around $35 to $40. They're a good investment because they'll make thousands of blocks. Is there a best way to make soil blocks? I don't know. This is another one of those areas where you'll find the best way to do 100. You'll find the best way to do it 100 different ways. I use compost. I make my compost good and wet. make them into blocks, put them on a cafeteria tray, and away I go. Here's some broccoli, and tomatoes planted on the 18th of January. It's the 25th now. So you can see, I mean, it works. It works rather well. These are 10-20 cell trays. I found them very much worth the expense to get good heavy-duty trays that are going to last. Now these are both from Bootstrap Farmer. This is a 72 cell tray. 36 cell tray. They come in 200 cell trays. There's all manner of configuration. I sort of follow the general guideline. The bigger the seed, the larger the cell. Pretty simple. Fill with compost. Press the compost down. Plant your seeds. Sprinkle a little more on top and set it aside. These work ideal for indoor planting in that you use this cell flat right here with drain holes, fill it up and plant. Use a bottom cell tray without holes, and that way you don't have any excess water making a mess inside your house. Mass plantings are transplant flats. This is a Glad storage container. It's $4 from a grocery store. I use them for seeds that germinate quickly, like spinach and lettuce and some herbs. I fill it with compost, sprinkle the seeds on top, put a little more compost on top of that, and then proceed with my germination. I use this method a lot during the growing season. I'm planning a video about transplanting the seedlings into the trays. If you don't want to wait, there's a link to a good video in the description. Whenever I start a seed, I make sure my planting medium is good and wet. Really wet. Before I put it into blocks or cell trays or transplant flats. I have to water much less, if at all, to get my seed to germinate. If I do water, it's very lightly. I take a little spray bottle of some description and spray the top. One tip, and this goes back to grow the soil, not the plant. One of the principles of what I'm trying to do with a no-dig garden. If you're using a culinary water supply and wet the compost mix, let it sit for a day before you do it to evaporate off the chlorines and chloramines. The chemicals in our culinary water supply are injected to kill bad bacteria. Unfortunately, these chemicals kill all the bacteria. No-dig gardens rely on soil bacteria to supply the nutrients to our plants. We need them alive. I considered putting air and water together because they take up the same space in the soil and need to be somewhat balanced. Without both, plant failure is all but guaranteed. When you start with the soil very wet, as I do, drainage is required. The excess water will drain away, the space will be filled with air, and things will kind of come into a balance. Once seeds germinate, you want to keep your compost moist, but not saturated. That's the balance. You have enough air, and you have enough water. Now, over the years, if there's one thing I've discovered about the air-water relationship that rings true more often than not, once germinated, keeping plants on the drier side is a far better place for growth than too wet. This fourth element, fifth element I guess, is the one where it seems most of the errors seem to be made. Keeping the seeds and young plants warm is an absolute necessity. If you're starting your plants indoors, keep them close to a heat source, warm window, heat vent, and cover them with plastic or a dome of some kind. When people ask me about germination outside or in a cold frame or a hot box or something like that, I always say the same thing. Buy the very best heat mat you can. Growers Supply, Bootstrap Farmer, Johnny Seed, companies that specialize in plants and plant growth are really the best source. This one is a 20 by 48. It holds 4 10-20 trays. I've had it for 5 years. It's still growing strong. As a rule, a good heating mat will keep the soil temperature around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is ideal for most seed germination. As we go through the season, we'll revisit seed starting. In order to get the most out of your garden, you're continually starting new seeds so that when one vegetable is finished, another one is ready to go in its place. Well, there you go. Thanks for watching. That's my take on seed starting. If this video has been helpful, like and subscribe. Leave questions and comments. Let's see if we can answer them together.